Hi, everybody. It's Laura. Welcome to the class of 74. Got a new episode for you today. And guess what? It's Thursday night. It's not like Friday morning or Saturday morning at 4 o'clock. I'm editing it tonight so I can get it out tomorrow. For those of you who haven't listened before, this is a continuing story from week to week. So if you haven't started with episode 1, I urge you to set your podcast player to start at the beginning and play right on through. I don't know if you know any writers, but if you do, ask them about when you're writing the scene that's foreshadowing something bad that's going to happen to a character. They will probably tell you that they're exhausted when they're writing. Last week's episode, number 3, as my other half said, it was very serious. You've got to watch this because I don't want you to go anywhere you don't want to go. And we're going to lighten up a little. A little. We still need drama, right? You have a good time. Enjoy the class of 74. Episode 4, In One So Young. Mrs. Watson's behavior. Her recent behavior makes me doubt her abilities as a parent. Mr. Watson's on a business trip in L.A. She turned to look at Cynthia. Until he gets back, I'm keeping Mimi with us. Why is Mrs. Watson such a bad mother? Her mother looked appalled. I didn't say she was a bad mother. Yes, you did. You just said you doubted her abilities as a parent. It's the same thing as being a bad mother. No, sweetie, you're misunderstanding me. It is Mrs. Watson's recent behavior, her behavior today, which has me so upset. What did she do? Her mother was clearly thinking about what to say or how to say it because the lines around her eyes were deeply creased. You can't say anything to Mimi about it. I won't say anything. Her mother sighed. Mrs. Watson's been home all day. This wasn't what Cynthia was expecting. But 10 million people called her. That's right, her mother said, rising from the chair. Well, why didn't she answer the phone? Her mother started moving around the kitchen, maybe to start dinner. Maybe to avoid Cynthia looking at her too closely. Something was up. Something big. I called Mr. Watson's office in New York from the hospital, and I asked his secretary to track him down, and why. I told her I wasn't comfortable making medical decisions for someone else's child. He called a little while later, spoke to the doctor, and then he and I spoke. She was turning up the heat on the electric skillet, preparing to sear the chops. Cynthia had never seen anyone else's mother use an electric skillet to cook dinner, but her mother made just about everything in it. Over the summer of 7th grade, she found out why. When her mother had gone off with the Red Cross to London, she had no idea how to cook because growing up in Westmount, Montreal, the Stormonts had a maid named Fifi who cooked everything because Cynthia's grandmother, Nana, didn't know how to cook either because she had grown up with a cook. So, after her 17-year-old mother arrived in England on an old Liberty ship, her Red Cross roommates in London taught her how to cook on the single gas burner they shared, and that was her foundation for everything she ever learned about cooking, which, by the way, she did not enjoy. In the fall, Cynthia was forced into taking home economics. The boys got to take woodshop. Cynthia had been expected to make dinner for her parents and bring back a report on how it went. When Cynthia came back with rave reviews for something called Woolton pie, her teacher confessed she had never heard of it. She explained it was a vegetable and gravy pie, and when she told the teacher where the recipe had come from, Cynthia was asked to do a presentation on it for the class for extra credit. Cynthia titled her presentation, War Food, Woolton Pie. During most wars through history, Cynthia explained to her classmates, The best food was sent to the troops in the field first, while at home, things like meat, fresh vegetables, flour, sugar, and grains were rationed. This was the situation in London during World War II, where it wasn't just a shortage of food that tested the civilians, but the Nazis had dropped so many bombs almost nobody had a kitchen anymore. The topic of this presentation, Woolton Pie, was an example of how civilians tried to carry on and have a nice meal anyway. Civilians quickly discovered the vegetables that were easiest to grow and store were the easiest to get their hands on. Potatoes, carrots, parsnips, cauliflower, turnips, and onions. These happened to be the main ingredients of Woolton Pie, which was named after Lord Woolton, who was the Minister of Food. Anyway, today people could make this tasty dish with a savory gravy and a pastry crust. But during the war, nobody had any flour, so they had to use mashed potatoes as a topping. But since there was no milk, they had to scrounge around for powdered milk. And if they couldn't find any of that, then they just used water. Since there was no butter for the mashed potatoes either, they used oleomargarine or margarine. But if there wasn't any of that, they used meat drippings they've saved up. The recipe called for baking the vegetables in gravy, which, again, because they didn't have flour, they had to make in a different way. After they washed and peeled the potatoes, they put the peelings to the side and boiled the potatoes in heavily salted water to cook them. They had lots of salt, which was good. Came from Cheshire. When the potatoes were done, they fished them out and kept the water. Then they minced the potato peelings as small as they could get them, put them into the potato water, and boiled it down to sort of a mush. Then they put some meat drippings into a pan and gradually stirred in the potato water and peels until it sort of looked like gravy, seasoned it with salt, and if they could find it, pepper, and then poured it over a cast iron roasting pan of chopped turnips, parsnips, carrots, onions, and cauliflower. They stirred all of it very thoroughly, covered it with a thick layer of mashed potatoes, and then baked the whole thing into someone's fireplace until it was delicious. Her presentation was such a big hit, she was asked to repeat it to 2 combined history classes. At any rate, that was why her mother liked to use the electric skillet to cook. Right now, her mother was turning the sizzling chops over in that electric skillet. When I told Mr. Watson nobody could reach Arabella, he said he knew for a fact she was there at the house because she had called him less than an hour before. She walked over to the stove to flip the switch on for the exhaust fan. I filled him in on everything that had happened. Cynthia waited, but nothing more seemed to be forthcoming. What did he say? He asked, could I keep Mimi here until he came home Friday? I said yes. Her mother started opening the cans of mushroom soup with the electric opener, the sound of which started as Chet dancing around the kitchen again, hoping against hope a can of recipe was being opened to mix in with her kibble. But why? She asked her mother. I didn't ask. I only requested he make sure Arabella was aware of the arrangement. Calm down, Chet. You've still got an hour to go. She started spooning the soup into the skillet. He promised Arabella would be told he'd arranged for Mrs. Valadares to drop off some of Mimi's things. She glanced up at the clock. I hope she does that soon. I have Mimi in one of your nightgowns, the blue and white one. I hope it doesn't get blood on it. Cynthia was going to lose her mind if she didn't find out what the story was. Mom, why did Mr. Watson ask you to keep Mimi here? I did not ask him because, besides the obvious fact that Mimi needs to stay quiet and get some rest, it's none of my business. Nor is it yours. She looked up. Truly, Cynthia, it is none of our business. This was getting creepy. Cynthia carried her plate and glass to the sink, rinsed them off, and put them in the dishwasher. Why does Mimi think she's staying here? Paint fumes, her mother said. Has she talked to her mother? No. She spoke to her father, though. We called him as soon as we got home. After a moment, Cynthia said, I feel scared for Mimi. Her mother turned the temperature down on the electric skillet, put the lid on it, and turned to give her a brief hug. I know it's upsetting, sweetie, but I'm afraid there are problems in that house that have gone on so long, Mimi's not even aware that they are problems. The routine seems so normal to her. Cynthia didn't have the slightest idea of what her mother was talking about. The telephone rang and her mother reached to answer it. Hello? Her sing-songy voice was back and Cynthia felt somewhat relieved. Charlotte, hello. I'm so glad you called. Evan's mother. Yes, do tell. Good. She nodded, listening. Ow. But just one? And not broken. Well, thank heavens for that. Just bed rest. Okay. Very good. Yes, she's right here. She just came in from school. She flashed a smile at Cynthia before looking up at the clock. Shall we say around 6:15? Then she can start on her homework and I can give her dinner before she goes. Yes. Please tell Casey how much I appreciate it. We have a house guest I'd rather not leave on her own. Okay, good. Yes, Charlotte. She'll be so glad. I'm so glad. Well, she said, hanging up the phone. Good news at last. Evan's going to be laid up for a few days, but he's going to be all right. He has a concussion, a cracked rib, and a bruised kidney, but bed rest will heal it. And he promises that he'll stay put if he can see you, and Dr. Whittaker has offered to come over here and pick you up at 6:15. But you can't stay long, honey, because Evan needs to rest. And then Dr. Whittaker will bring you back. She plucked at her blouse. Golly, it's warm. And you must be hot in those pants. Why don't you change into some shorts and sandals? She did. Then she listened at the guest room door, but didn't hear any sounds. Mimi must still be sleeping. She went back downstairs, carrying her big new notebook, and set about scotch taping her schedule inside the front cover. Her mother said Mrs. Fitzgerald was stopping by for a drink and asked Cynthia if she would put the cushions out. Cynthia went into the dining room where they stacked the cushions that were made for the wrought iron furniture on the terrace. She figured she better put them all out because her father would be coming home and he'd want to sit out there too, and Mimi might want to come down and sit out there. Oh, it was better if she just put them all out because then it would look very pretty and everybody could sit wherever they wanted, in a chair, on the love seat, on an ottoman, on a bench, whatever. She also carried out a few ashtrays. Mrs. Fitzgerald arrived a little after 5 and came into the kitchen with her mother to make Bloody Marys with the new stuff her parents loved, clamato. It beat Cynthia why anyone would want to mess up tomato juice with clam juice. Yuck. Mrs. Fitzgerald asked Cynthia if the rumors were true. Was she going to hang out at the Fitzgerald's pool with Annabelle on Saturday while they were at Forest Hills? I don't know how good a chaperone Jack's going to be, Liz, she said to her mother, referring to Annabelle's older brother, who was a senior at a private day school in Stamford. But at least he has his license, so if anything were to happen... Her mother shot Cynthia a look. We're not talking injuries in hospitals anymore, right? Cynthia smiled. Mrs. Fitzgerald sipped her cocktail. I heard, Cynthia, there's a new girl from California who's allegedly very cool. Katie Langston, Cynthia said. Oh, I see you stay on top of things, Mrs. Fitzgerald laughed. I introduced her to Annabelle. We all have geometry together. Annabelle was thinking about inviting her to come over on Saturday. That would be fun, Cynthia said. She and Annabelle also are in the same gym class. Oh, gym suits, Mrs. Fitzgerald said. I just picked up Annabelle's. Have you seen the prices of them this year, Liz? Bill says Brighton's sports shop exclusive with the school is like shooting fish in a barrel. And will the girls even wear them? Oh, they'll wear them, her mother said, holding the door open for Mrs. Fitzgerald to go out on the terrace. But they won't shower, will they, Cynthia? It's hard enough to be seen in your underwear, she said honestly. It was torture for most of the girls she knew. Mrs. Schyler started to go outside, but then came back in, putting her drink down on the counter. Did we ever get you a lock for Jim? Dad gave me the one off the shed. She hoped she could find the key before she had Jim. Okay, good. Her mother opened up a box of Triscuits and was trying to coax a few into a small bowl. The doorbell rang. Can you run and get that, sweetie? It's probably Mrs. Valadares. Cynthia walked to the front door. Maybe Mrs. Valadares would tell her what was going on over at the Watsons' house. She opened the door and greeted her, who was looking none too pleased and was evidently in a hurry, for she merely thrust an overnight bag toward Cynthia. Miss Mimi's things. Cynthia took the bag from her. Don't you want to see her? No. She was already halfway to her old Corvair. Tell Miss Mimi I will see her after the paint fumes are gone on Friday. Poor Mimi, Cynthia thought, closing the door. Couldn't be much fun living in that house. Cynthia put the suitcase down at the foot of the stairs and headed back into the kitchen. She was still hungry and helped herself to a pork chop with mushroom soup. She sat down to work on her Spanish homework and eat her chop. She took a furtive look out the window and picked up the chop in her hand. It tasted great. Outside, Mrs. Fitzgerald was describing the stealth and subterfuge it had required to buy a one-of-a-kind hat out from under some other lady at the boutique downtown, Lucille's. The owner, Lucille, did not seem to have a last name, but she was highly esteemed around town for her excellent taste in good gossip. Her shop was really expensive, and her mother only went there to find a dress for a very special occasion, like her parents' 25th wedding anniversary when they went to the Rainbow Room in New York and slept over at the Plaza Hotel. Lucille didn't do slacks, shorts, or tops. She sold elegant dresses, long and short, hats, silk French scarves, and for part of the year offered what she said were one-of-a-kind, one-piece bathing suits that had little skirts. This claim of being one of a kind became highly suspect after Mrs. Fitzgerald bought one of those expensive bathing suits and then promptly spotted the same suit when she played bridge at Weburn's Beach Club in Rowayton. She was very upset about it. After she finished her pork chop, Cynthia started feeling really sleepy, like she could put her head down on the table and take a nap. She couldn't. She was going to see Evan. She took out an icy bottle of Tab from the back of the refrigerator, used the bottle opener, and took a long drink, which promptly made her burp. Something caught her eye. She parted the cafe curtains over the sink. The Whittakers' cream and wood-paneled Pontiac station wagon was sitting in the driveway. Dr. Whittaker was early. She took another fast sip of Tab and rumbled through the utility drawer to find a bottle stopper. Got it. She fit the rubber part into the bottle, pushed the plunger down, and stuck the bottle into the refrigerator. Good, she'd have it later. Mom, I'm leaving, she called through the screen door. Dr. Whittaker's here. Okay, dear. Give Evan my love. She started out, but stopped, straining her ears. Are she and Evan an item again? Mrs. Fitzgerald asked in a low voice. Who knows? Her mother whispered. When Cynthia hurried out the front door, Dr. Whittaker was on the second flagstone stair and apologizing for being a little early. He was still wearing a suit and tie and looked very, very tired. He was around her father's age and was a lot like her father in that he was pretty much a no-nonsense, no goofing around kind of parent. He held the car door open for her, and as she slid in, she thanked him for picking her up. She fastened the seatbelt because Dr. Whittaker was a stickler about such things. When he climbed into the car, he said, Picking you up is a very small price to pay if it helps my son get his head back on straight. She wasn't sure what that meant, so she didn't say anything. Charlotte tells me, he said, referring to his wife, stretching his arm over the back of the seat to see as he backed out of the driveway. You seem to be very on top of things this afternoon when she arrived at school. This was the second time someone had told her she was on top of things. This was kind of cool. She wasn't accustomed to Dr. Whittaker complimenting her. She wasn't very accustomed to Dr. Whittaker talking to her, period. He put the car into drive. I was hoping you could run through the facts of today for me, he said. The facts as you understood them or absorbed them. I'd like to help, she said. Good. Thank you. Then please start at the beginning. Well, the mystery of why Dr. Whittaker picked her up was solved. Dr. Whittaker liked to keep things low-key, keep a lid on drama. She started at the beginning, carefully picking her words to describe what happened. How Evan had shouted he wasn't at football practice because he was playing soccer. And then how, quote, Wronski, all the kids. He called Evan the word that begins with an F, a word that's used as a weapon to hurt people. Gay men people. Dr. Whittaker looked at her. That's a very enlightened view, Cynthia. My mom gave me a lecture about that word today and told me to say gay. I'm glad you listened to her. He started to loosen his tie. The world has a lot riding on your generation. She didn't know what to say to that either. He glanced over. My partner in my private practice is homosexual. That was sort of startling news. We don't advertise the fact for obvious reasons. She wondered, well, why? Evan told me about your partner, but not the part about... Anyway, he said, Mrs. Whittaker said, you finally found someone who was smart enough to keep up with you. He laughed, a deep-throated, low rumbling laugh that surprised her. She didn't think she'd ever heard Dr. Whittaker laugh before. That's nice to hear. But if you don't mind, I wish you would continue telling me about what happened today. While they wound their way across town on the beautiful Brighton roads and avenues towards Sagamore, where the Whittakers lived, Cynthia tried to tell the doctor everything that happened in proper order. For 200 years, Sagamore was a section of Brighton that had been considered its commercial center. But that changed in this century because of people's desire to live closer to the Sound. The fact that Evan and Cynthia had been zoned into the same junior high district when they lived so absolutely far away from each other was only another indicator of the problems their baby boomer class size had caused. While most of the old commercial buildings and dilapidated houses in Sagamore had been torn down to build new neighborhoods in the 1950s and 60s, there were still 3 very old houses in the area, all near Route 1, one of which the Whittakers bought, a renovated salt box known as the Baker Homestead that dated back to 1702. Dr. and Mrs. Whittaker were passionate about history, and while Cynthia thought salt boxes were the ugliest houses imaginable, as a symbol of growing prosperity in colonial America, its distinctive shape caught their imaginations, or so they said. Baker Homestead had begun as a one-story, one-room house with a fireplace and a loft, was doubled in size with an expansion that centralized the fireplace. In the next phase, the lofts were extended upwards to create a second floor and attic, and then finally, a one-story addition was built onto the back of the house for storage, over which a windowless cat-slide roof ran from the highest point of the house down nearly to the ground. The Whittakers had snapped up the house because the previous owners had renovated it before the zoning board and historical society could place restrictions on how it was done, so they had great plumbing and electricity, unlike the other 2 houses. People were always stopping in front of their house and taking pictures. Sometimes there were people in their backyard, and once in a while, usually on Sundays, people would ring the doorbell and ask if they could see inside. Once a year, the Whittakers let the Historical Society run tours through it. Cynthia didn't know how the Whittakers could stand it. My parents can't Stand it, Evan said last year when Cynthia was helping to pack and move stuff onto a truck, which is why we're taking all our personal stuff and valuables somewhere else for the weekend. If they can't stand it, Evan, then why do they do it? They believe it's our civic duty, Evan said, in much the same way a child might recite his address to a police officer. Your timeline, Cynthia, squares with Evan's, Dr. Whittaker told her. Thanked her again for her account. He said it was very helpful. And then he said, there is something very wrong with that young man. I'll say, Cynthia murmured, looking out the window. They were almost at the Whittakers. Dr. Reynolds, my business partner, who's smart enough to keep up with you. Whatever, the doctor said, gesturing. Dr. Reynolds suggested an aspect of this situation I should investigate, and I think he's right. Oh boy, he said, as the house came into view. Who do all these cars belong to? There was a gold-colored Dodge Coronet, a green Plymouth Roadrunner, and a beat-up Ford pickup spray-painted black. Cynthia didn't recognize any of them. I'm not much in the mood for company tonight, he sighed, turning into the driveway. So if you don't mind, Cynthia, after you visit with Evan a little while, you and I will leave and I'll take you home. Okay. They parked and Cynthia had opened her door by the time Dr. Whittaker had rushed around to hold it for her. She thanked him and walked ahead towards the house. The front door opened. It was Mrs. Whittaker. She was a lot younger than Dr. Whittaker. She stepped out, carefully closing the door behind her. Coach Griffin and some of the players stopped in, she whispered, but I haven't awakened Evan yet. Hello, Cynthia. Thank you for your help today. Oh, you're welcome. They don't have to see him, Dr. Whittaker said. It will be enough if he knows they stopped by. Casey, she sighed, shaking her head. Dr. Whittaker's full name was Kirby Carey Whittaker. Cynthia's father was the other man around town who hid a name behind an initial, Percival William Schyler. You know Evan will be upset if he doesn't see them while they're here. Dr. Whittaker gestured, tired and giving up. Fine. And when are we going to hold this parade through the house up to his room? There are only 4 boys and Coach Griffin. And you and me and Cynthia. I count 8. Okay. Casey, I'll wake up Evan and bring him down. No, Doctor said, pointing his finger for emphasis. You will take those people into the backyard, and I will take Cynthia upstairs to wake up Evan. And they can have 5 minutes together before we will bring Evan downstairs, and I will take Cynthia home. All right? Mrs. Whittaker looked at him for a long moment and then said, Whatever you say, dear, and led them inside. Ooh, boy, Cynthia thought. She was ticked off. Well, Cynthia followed Dr. Whittaker upstairs. They heard Mrs. Whittaker talking to the group, and there was male talk and laughter, and a screen door slammed a couple of times. No one could ever sneak around this house under the oriental carpets and runners. Every floorboard creaked or squeaked. Dr. Whittaker opened the door to Evan's room upstairs, and Cynthia stepped inside. He was lying diagonally across his double bed on his back, one arm extended back against the headboard, and one leg was bent at the knee under the covers. Purple rivulets had oozed down into Evan's face from his forehead, pooling beneath his eyes. He and Mimi were a pair, all right. Ev, she said softly. One eye opened, he smiled, bringing his arm down and holding it open to her. Your dad's here, she said, tipping him off. She couldn't stretch out next to him. Thanks for coming, he said, pushing himself upright. Hey, Dad. I'll be back in 5 minutes, Dr. Whittaker said, closing the door. I look like crap, don't I? I think you're as handsome as ever, she lied, leaning to kiss him before sitting down on the edge of the bed. And I think you're the most beautiful creature in the world, he said, tracing her mouth with his finger. Don't bristle, she commanded herself. She was getting pathetic about this looks thing. You know, he said, I love you. He kissed her again. I love you too, she told him. Coach Griffin and Andrew and those 3 other players who were there today are downstairs. They want to see you. No kidding, he said. pulling back the covers to swing his legs over the side of the bed. All he had on was a faded pair of gym shorts. She noticed how dark hair was growing in earnest across his chest now. There had been a lot of dark hair on his legs for a while. Evan had a nice body. Annabelle would say it was symmetrical and well-balanced, or whatever the heck it was she was talking about today. I'm supposed to bring you down, and then your father is supposed to take me home, like in 5 minutes. Oh, he wants to take you home so he can escape, Evan said. I know the drill. I better put on a shirt. He stood up and almost immediately sat right back down. Whoa, I forgot about my head. And, ow, my rib. Oh, that SOB. What dirty pool hit me like that from behind. You need to take it slow, Ev. Here, drink a little water, she suggested, handing him the glass that was on the nightstand. Thanks. He drank it all down and handed the glass back to her. Okay, a shirt. She put a hand on his arm. No rush, Evan. Take your time. He was really looking a little rocky, and she wondered where Dr. Whittaker was. I had blood in my whiz, he said. That was pretty freaky. Supposed to go away, though. I hope. Okay, let's get this show on the road. This time he stood up and stayed up, moving toward his dresser. After he gingerly pulled on an Allman Brothers t-shirt over his head, he turned to the window. Is that another car? Dad's going to lose his mind. He walked over to look. He let out an expletive. Cynthia, come here, he said, waving frantically. Look who it is. Standing in the driveway was Victor Wronski and Dr. Mullen. Think I can nail him with my cannonball from here? The iron cannonball from the War of 1812 that Evan found in Lake Erie a couple summers ago was within arm's reach. It was always within arm's reach, just in case. The massive Wronski was stooping to talk with the principal, only Wronski couldn't stand still. He was stepping forward and back and to the side and then forward again, fidgeting while flexing his big fingers in and out like he was crushing something in his hands. We better tell your father, Cynthia said. She didn't like this. She was glad all those other boys were downstairs. Yeah, I guess. Evan sounded depressed. He walked over to open the door. Dad, where are you? Right here, the doctor said. There's something you need to see. What's going on? Dr. Whittaker asked, coming in. He had taken off his tie and jacket and was rolling up the second sleeve of his shirt. Come look, Evan said. Cynthia backed away from the window. Evan pointed. That's the moron who attacked me. And that's Dr. Mullen, the principal of this high school. Dr. Whittaker's head jerked. That's who attacked you? Yep. I want to talk to him, the doctor said, sounding determined as he wheeled around and quickly walked out. I don't know if this is going to be good or bad, Evan said, moving back to stand in front of the window. Cynthia stepped up next to him and took his hand. Evan absently brought her hand up to his mouth to kiss and then abandoned it entirely when Dr. Whittaker came striding down the walk. The doctor said something to Dr. Mullen, and the two men shook hands. Then Dr. Whittaker turned to Wronski, who was still moving around, fidgeting, moving, fidgeting. The surgeon held out his hand to him. Oh, Dad, don't, Evan muttered. Wronski backed away. Then he stepped forward again, hesitated, and then finally shook the doctor's hand. Dr. Whittaker then spoke to Dr. Mullen and pointed to the gate that led to the backyard. The principal said something. Dr. Whittaker said something, and once again he gestured toward the gate. He wants him to go into the backyard, Evan said. After another exchange, Dr. Mullen nodded and walked to the gate, while Dr. Whittaker motioned for Wronski to walk ahead of him into the house. What is your father doing? Hell if I know, Evan said, moving out to the hall. They heard Dr. Whittaker talking in a low voice downstairs. They heard floorboards squeak and groan under the men as they walked. They heard the creak of a door and then the sound of a door being firmly closed. They're in his study, Evan whispered. What the heck is Dad doing? Cynthia whispered. He mentioned that his business partner said there was something he should investigate, something that had to do with today. Maybe that's what he's doing. Investigate what? I don't know. Geez, Dad, Evan said, sounding annoyed. Maybe you could talk to me first before you start your investigation. Before you invite the enemy into our house to kill us all. Come on, Evan, let's go see Andrew and Coach Griffin and the guys before you get too tired. I do feel like crap, he confessed. Maybe your mom needs to check you out. He looked at her. I'm fine. Hear me? I'm fine. Now let's go see the guys. She followed him downstairs and watched at the back door while the soccer players and coach and principal congratulated Evan. Mrs. Whittaker came over to her. Where's my husband? He's in his study with the guy who attacked Evan. What? Cynthia nodded. Dr. Mullen brought him, and Dr. Whittaker took him into his study. He said he wanted to talk to him. Our lawyer should be doing all the talking for us, she said, rubbing her forehead. She sighed. I suppose he can't help himself. She caught Cynthia's look. My husband is a physician, a healer, in the truest sense of the word. He thinks everything in the world can be tracked to something, and that something can always be fixed. He said his partner suggested there was something he should investigate. I wish Brandon were here, or at least with Casey in the study. She let out a sarcastic laugh. My husband's chatting with a would-be murderer. It was pure luck Evan didn't break a rib and lacerate his kidney and intestines, you know. And that principal. She threw a hand like she was tossing something away and leaned close to Cynthia. That principal suggested I go into the kitchen and make tater tots for everybody. Cynthia laughed. She couldn't help it. Fortunately, it made Mrs. Whittaker smile. I've always liked you, Cynthia, she said, resting a hand on her shoulder. You have a good sense of humor, like my son does, while Dr. Whittaker and I are like pallbearers at a funeral, and that's on our best day. Now Cynthia really laughed, making Evan look over. It was an increasingly strange night. Her mom called at 8 o'clock to see where she was. Mrs. Whittaker apologized and said events had gotten a little out of control on their end, but she would drive Cynthia home herself, right now. Cynthia would have felt bad, except Mrs. Whittaker said it was the excuse she needed to herd all these men out of here and get Evan back into bed. She accomplished this quickly, and not necessarily in the nicest or most polite way, but as she herself said, she was running on empty at this point and was one step away from collapse. Finally, it was just Evan, Cynthia, Dr. Mullen, and Mrs. Whittaker, and Dr. Whittaker was still in the study with Neanderthal Man. At 8:45, the doorbell rang, and they heard Mrs. Whittaker talking to two men. Evan got up to see who it was. He never came back. Cynthia heard knocking and doors opening and men speaking in hushed voices. Dr. Mullen, Mr. Whittaker said in a loud voice, could you please join us? Dr. Mullen looked a little scared, but he went. Mrs. Whittaker and Evan came back out. Evan looked terrible and said he needed to go to bed, and his mother went with him upstairs. So there was Cynthia, twiddling her thumbs. Her ride home was looking more doubtful by the second. She went into the kitchen to call home. She had to let it ring and ring because she figured her parents must be outside in the garden or something. Finally, her father picked up. Kiddo, where are you? I'm still at the Whittakers. She lowered her voice. There's sort of a lot going on over here. The guy who attacked Evan today. Your mother told me about that, he exclaimed. What in damnation is happening in this town? Her father had had a couple of drinks because that was the only time he cursed. He'd only been home for a couple hours, though, so that meant he probably had ridden out to Brighton in the bar car. Possibly martinis instead of beer, too. So Cynthia stood in the Whittakers' kitchen, listening to her father talk on and on about the decline of ethics, morality, and integrity in America, and why the heck did they teach Cynthia to read with flashcards, because it was going to mess up her entire academic life forever. Your mother now says I am supposed to come and pick you up because it's so late. So if you would tell me where the hell you are. Now her mother was talking to her father, and it sounded as though she had had a few drinks too. She wondered where poor Mimi was in all these cocktails. Her parents were now arguing and had evidently forgotten she was on the phone. Well, she could take a cab home. They had a charge account. Of course, she had abused the privilege while they were in Europe last time, and she wasn't supposed to use it anymore. She debated now whether to hang up the phone or not, because if she needed to call her parents again, the line would be busy. But if she kept the line open, she could always periodically yell in hopes someone passing through the kitchen might hear her. Maybe Mimi. Cynthia, you're still here, Mrs. Whittaker said. I thought Dr. Mullen was going to drive you home. She was glad he didn't. Who wanted to ride in the same car with Neanderthal man? She was glad he didn't. Who wanted to ride in the same car with Neanderthal man? He's had a very long day, she said, and so I think he went home. Well, come up and say goodnight to Evan, and one of us will take you home. I should apologize to your mother for keeping you so long. What's the phone doing on the table? She asked, walking over and hanging it up. Come along, let's go up. Dr. Whittaker wants to speak to both of you in a little while. It's very interesting, the news he has to share. On the staircase, she paused and turned to look at Cynthia. You know my husband is brilliant, but I wonder if you know how much he cares about the world. Cynthia didn't know what to make of that, so she just smiled. Evan was sitting up against the pillows on his bed, still in his t-shirt and gym shorts. Golly, he looked awful. He smiled at Cynthia and patted the edge of the bed. Mrs. Whittaker put her hands on her hips. What about your mother? Mother goes right here, he said smoothly, patting the other side of the bed. That's okay, Mrs. Whittaker. I'll take the far side, Cynthia said, walking around. Your father wants to talk to you, she said to Evan, easing down. She opened the nightstand drawer, took out a thermometer, shook it, looked at it, and put it in her son's mouth. While his mother was rooting around in the drawer, frowning, Evan wriggled his eyebrows at Cynthia and mimed smoking a cigarette. I think we can put these away, Evan, don't you? She asked, laying 3 Matchbox cars out on her hand. No way, Mom. They'll be worth a fortune someday. Put the thermometer back in your mouth. All those baseball cards. Evan took out the thermometer again. That's a 1962 Ferrari Berlinetti you're holding, just like the one I'm going to drive one day, he said, plucking it out of her hand. I thought you loved history, Mom. I do, except when it's piling up around my ears. We should sell some of this stuff. You're going to be in college soon, and we could use the money. She finally got Evan to keep the thermometer in his mouth to take his temperature. It was a little high, but not too high. Then there was a quiet knock on the door, and Dr. Whittaker appeared. He smiled a little, crossed his arms over his chest, and leaned against the door frame. My mood's improving already, just looking at you. Cynthia was pretty sure he was talking to his wife, which was a pretty smooth thing to say. So that's where Evan got it from. What's happening, good doctor? Evan's mother asked. What's happening is highly confidential, but considering what happened today, Evan, Victor gave me permission to share this information with you. It's his way of making an amend. Who's Victor? Wronski, Cynthia said. Evan frowned. So why didn't he just apologize to me? Why didn't he come out and apologize to my teammates for what he said about them? He should apologize to the whole team, Dad. The doctor raised a calming hand. First things first, Victor is very ill and requires medical treatment. Dr. Reynolds suggested a possibility that turned out to be a major factor in his attack on you, son. At football camp a year ago this past summer, Someone started Victor on steroids, combinations of dianabol, anadrol, and testosterone to increase his muscle mass and his performance. In some men, the anabolic nature of these, that is, the changes that occur on a molecular level, can wreak havoc with men, incite bouts of fury and violence, like what happened today. One could say Victor went pharmaceutically insane this afternoon. That's why he threw you into the lockers. You mean like the Mr. Olympia stuff that stuff bodybuilders like Oliva and Schwarzenegger take? Dr. Whittaker nodded. There are very practical medical uses for steroids, but prolonged use of almost any of them will lead to other problems. This young man had become addicted to them, to the sense of power they gave him, the increase in his muscle mass, his enhanced performance. He was convinced steroids were going to be the only way he was going to play well enough to be scouted for college football. He had the money to keep a steady supply coming and needs to be monitored in a hospital setting to get off the stuff. Are these legal? Cynthia asked. Yes, but like alcohol, in some people, the effects can be ruinous, while others are barely affected. In one as young as Victor, the long-term cognitive effects could be absolutely terrible. Evan and Cynthia looked at each other. This was crazy stuff. She'd never even heard of steroids. She'd heard of heroin and LSD, but dianabol and testosterone. The physician arrived tonight from Taryn Meadows. That was the doctor, along with a counselor. He took one look at Victor and nodded. Kids, that's what's happening with anabolic steroids and why he attacked you today, Evan. I hope you'll give the guy a chance after he gets off this stuff. And Dr. Mullen sure has his work cut out for him. Because Victor said one of the people who pressured him to take steroids is now co-captain of the football team. I hate to repeat myself, but oh, wow! Cynthia, good heavenly day, what is going on in this crazy town? For those of you who grew up in a town like Brighton, I hope that you're laughing and not thinking, oh, yeah, this is exactly what the first day of school was like in 1971. Obviously, it wasn't. But you can never trust a novelist with a story. You don't want to bore everybody, so you got to have something happen. But of course, I can hear some people out there, my writer friends saying, yeah, but Lord, does everything have to happen in one day? Are we ever going to get to the second day of school? We are going to get to the second day of school, ladies and gentlemen. Next Friday, we will have a brand new episode. I hope you guys had fun. Remember, we don't drink and drive anymore. Ever. Take care.